How many times do you have to read a screenplay before you know you want to make the movie?
It's been different every time. It varies. There's a project I'm involved with now called The Hearts of Men. And after I read it the first time, I was in. It's one of the best scripts I've ever read, which is why I've been working on it the last several years and pushing it with my team. So it was a no-brainer. As opposed to other projects, it's not always about the script. The script is the most important thing first, but it's about the team. So sometimes I love the script, but if the team is not a team I want to work with, or I'm not the proper fit, then I won't do the project. That's a major variable on the decision making. And then the other part that I look at is that if the script needs some work, is the screenwriter willing to do rewrites, and what is their schedule like? Are they easy to work with? Do they have an ego? And then do they have to direct? That's another thing. Are they flexible? And the other part is that I look at it backwards, like when, especially more now than before, earlier in my career, I have to see where it's going to go. And not to say that I will know the answer to that, but I have to get an idea of how this project will get bought and seen. Because it's one thing to get the project made, but if no one sees it, it's a waste of time. So I'm figuring out the distribution, like where is it going to go? What festivals make sense? And the time of the year it can go, all of the things before even, raising the money or putting the financial plan or getting talent, is that where is it going to live, and how long of a process do I believe this is going to take for it to go? So I look at all of that besides just the creative. I mean, there's some scripts that I've read that I love, but I just can't figure it out. So I'm not going to touch it. I don't want to overpromise, underdeliver, and I don't want to take on a project that I just can't support and give false expectations. I rather pass on it and have someone else take it on and know that the project's going to be made the proper and correct way.
What if you like the story, but okay, you know that one person has a big ego and maybe they're in charge or they have a large influence. Have you ever said, well, I know who this person is and I'm going to go in knowing that and try to work around it, and because I really want to be a part of this?
I have done that specifically once in my career, and it's always like a back and forth. At the end of the day, I'm glad that I worked on the project, and it was definitely worth it. I believe where I am at now, it really depends on who that person is, if I'm willing to, take that hit. There was a project that I was involved with that was supposed to shoot in New York, and it was moved to LA. And I was fine with that. But what I gathered from the person in charge, he didn't want me there because he wanted to bring his own people in from LA. Like, why is this guy from New York involved in this production? And what I noticed working with him and on set was that everybody kind of worked at his beckoning call. And that's not me. I'm not someone to kiss ass. And that was the tone that was there. I want to say throughout the entire process, I was the outsider. And there were some difficult, moments and hits that I had to take on that production. But working with the talent and working with the writer, director, and the team, it was so worth it. And our journey with the film, the festival, and it getting sold and bought and coming out was great. It was so rewarding. But earlier on, before I came on, there was a moment where I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. And I know if I didn't do it, looking at it now, I would have regretted it. So it was a good, I would say, exercise, or just tucking my pride away and just doing what I had to do. And it was worth it at the end.
I like that, tucking it, but that's good. Because sometimes if you know what it is going in, you're like, okay, I'm going to adjust for that. This may not be who I am, but I like that. That's good. Tucking your pride away.
Yeah, having the right mindset.
Yeah, that's a great statement. Is it your policy to read a screenplay in its entirety, no matter how bad it is?
That's a very good question. I want to say earlier on, I'd always finish the script no matter what. But now I get so much material, it's very hard for me to do that. And I have a buffer, actually. I have a very good relationship with NYU. So I have a team of interns that usually work, with me. And I have them do coverage, and I have them look at the pacing, the character, the overall story, and I have them look for things that are important to me. So, for example, there was a web series that was brought to me. They had done season 1. It was very successful. And I didn't know web series can have distribution. Apparently this one did, and it had a nice budget. And this was a queer filmmaker that brought it to me. And in, I want to say, the 3rd episode, one of my interns flagged this, and I had read it. I missed it, honestly. She is Puerto Rican, and she was telling me, like, look at this scene where this character or these characters go into a bar, and all of them are queer except for this young lady, and she's speaking to the bartender behind, and the bartender is a hard-working, back-breaking Latina. And it was just a stereotype that just didn't sit well. And she flagged it to me. And I had a conversation with her and the team about it. And I know that wasn't the filmmaker's intent. So when I circled back with him and spoke with him about my feedback and the team's feedback, I did bring that up. And I said that, one of my goals is to make sure that I work and empower women, BIPOC and queer communities. There's a problem with this specific scene, and he apologized. He was embarrassed, and he wasn't his intention, completely missed it. And long story short, he changed that. We ended up not working on the project together, but he was glad with making that decision, to making that edit for it. And there's been, I want to say, colleagues, friends that have brought me projects, and the team was very against what was written in it, the misogyny, how the characters spoke. And the team that actually brought it to me was a team of young women. And I brought up what my team had discussed, which was also a team of 7 young women. And I shared what they said and my thoughts on it. And their response is that, well, we understand, we agree, but this is the reality. This is actually based off what the writer has encountered, and this is spot on. So we're not trying to make women look bad in a certain way. We're women ourselves, and this is just authentic. And I understood what they were saying, and I got it. But for my purposes and my brand, I didn't want to get involved. But right now, the project, I believe, maybe it was shot or it's about to be shot. I did see that it's fully funded, and one of my colleagues that is, a person of color as well, he's a very prolific producer. I saw he got behind it, and he is really making it happen. And I have so much respect for him, and I know that I think he's as good, if not a better producer than me, to be frank. So it's just a personal choice. Again, not everything is right for me, and I'm not right for everyone. And I think these filmmakers are great. I just couldn't get behind, that story.
Sure. Was it misogyny that was shown in a way that it was making it acceptable? Or, because there are, misogynist people in the world, male and female. There's women that hate other women, and that's a reality. And so did you just not want to have it be, was it shown in a way that it condoned it, or it seemed as if...
It was comedic. It was like romantic comedy. Some of the characters also were Latino. There were stereotypes in there. And it just made women look bad. It made, to my opinion, it made women look bad, and it made all of the Latin characters look bad. So when I had that conversation with the filmmakers, they agreed and understood, but this is their reality, and they want to stick to their story. And I'm not one to tell someone to change their story. If that's their truth, they should honor it. I just can't, for my brand and what I believe in, I just can't do that.
Sure. Do you think it's okay for someone within their own culture to show these stereotypes, or is it? I mean, like, let's say if a man wants to write a female character, I'm not necessarily offended by it. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But I know some people feel that only the person being portrayed should really write those characters.
There's this whole conversation with what's going on right now in terms of telling stories about people of color. And I will say that my opinion, I don't think it's a fact or whatever, that story, if it's told by someone that's not a person of color, someone on the team should be a person of color to verify and make sure it's authentic, and it should be genuine. It shouldn't be, let's just bring this person on to check that box, because that's not acceptable either. But if it's someone that's not a person of color telling the story, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think that a person of color should have the first, right of refusal or attempt. But if someone else is telling that story, I think to honor the story the right way, they should fact check and get someone that can verify or that can complement, the story. I think it's only right and fair. In terms of telling stories that may be offensive, and let's say it's a young woman telling a story that could be offensive. I mean, if it's their truth, who am I to tell them, or anyone's to tell them that they shouldn't tell that story? That's their story, and there's an audience, for that. I think that certain stories may affect a community, per se. Perfect example is that if you look at in the past, it's gotten much better, but a lot of stories around Muslim people, they show them as extremists, they're just very over the top. And that's not the reality of it. There are some extremists, but there's a small percentage. So yes, some of these things may have happened in the Middle East or other parts of the world. That's true, but that's not the only stories that need to be told, because the human experience is that people just look at Muslim people in that way, and that's not the case. So I think that there are individuals or filmmakers that should show other stories around Muslim people.
Sure. I mean, you could say that maybe someone that's not a person of color would want to, let's say if we took a Muslim individual, maybe they're being profiled. Maybe they feel they're being monitored, their electronic communications, or when they feel they're being watched. And is it okay for someone that's not a person of color to write this story of someone that feels like they're being targeted and they're not doing anything wrong, but maybe the powers that be or people around them have said that they're bad? I don't know. Is that offensive? Is it okay to kind of tell their story if that's not someone who's actually living it? I think that's the big debate, and I think maybe is it done in a patronizing way, or is it done in a way that actually shows a person, a full person, and not just a stereotype of a person.
I think if it's a documentary, then it's very challenging to bat for that. I think if it's a narrative, they can tell that story, but again, it's getting those allies, because in the world that we're in right now, if someone else is telling that story, and when the word gets out through the trades or through the general public, people may boycott the film. So it's not helping the filmmaker, it's not helping tell the story, because people won't support it. So I think it's important to get some type of ambassador or brand ambassador that can confirm or fact check or kind of give it a stamp of not approval in terms of the story, but the things that can be harmful, because you couldn't get backlash or can hurt your movie or career.